Protesters in Shanghai are calling for President Xi Jinping to step down. Such displays against China's Communist Party take courage and run great personal risk. But public frustration following 3 years of draconian efforts to contain COVID-19 has boiled over, with protests erupting across the country. Here, in footage shared on Twitter that hasn't been independently verified, a man can be seen speaking passionately to a crowd in Shanghai. Moments later, he's surrounded before the effort to bundle him into a car. Since 2019, entire cities have been closed for weeks and even months on end, with no public debate on how best to deal with COVID-19. But the catalyst for these rare acts of defiance appears to be an apartment fire in Urumqi on November 24th, in which 10 people were killed. Urumqi being a city where residents have been on lockdown since August.
We believe that with the leadership of the Communist Party and the cooperation and support of all Chinese people, our fight against COVID-19 will be successful.
But 3 years on, all that lockdowns have achieved is delaying the virus's spread and a Chinese public that has far less immunity to it. Police broke up many peaceful demonstrations in cities across China over the weekend, as well as those in Hong Kong. But it wasn't just locals who were targeted by police. Here, BBC journalist Ed Lawrence is brought to the ground while covering the protests in Shanghai.
Hey, are you okay? Barry, call the consulate now.
Mr. Lawrence has since been released. In a statement, the BBC said it had received no official explanation or apology from Chinese authorities. Apparently, the officials who released him said they'd arrested him for his own good, in case he caught COVID from the crowd. Similar demonstrations have been taking place on college campuses around the country, where students hold sheets of blank white paper, which are said to represent censorship. Local protests aren't uncommon in China, but usually they're targeted at a local government issue, with protesters typically appealing to Beijing to right the wrong, as it were. But these protests are notable for criticising a national policy and communist government excesses.
We have seen just mass discontent, and people are linking this to Xi Jinping's rule itself. It's not just protests against some local official.
Many arrests were made and many more will come over the coming days as the CCP utilises its surveillance powers to identify the participants. It seems, despite his recent elevation to Mao-like status, Mr. Xi's control may not be as total as party propagandists suggest. And while Beijing will no doubt claim inspiration for the protests comes from countries like the US, the Chinese public knows who's responsible for zero COVID, and it isn't a foreign power.